Did someone say Tamsin Greenway's voice has got a little deeper and maybe a little posher? Bit more from Essex as well. This is Off the Court with me, Caroline Barker, for 1 week only, and mainly just to do the reading out loud bits. They brought me back to hold Tamsin Greenway's hand after the announcement about who makes the NSL in 2025. And yours is a hand, Tamsin, that's been furiously typing responses, but now you get to use your voice. How have you found the days since the announcement?
It's been busy. I think we had over 500 comments on all of my socials, which is brilliant because we wanted people to feel like they had a voice, and the whole point of doing this was to try and answer some questions. I think what was great is we were able to collate them into about 4 or 5 different points, which is what we're going to try and cover today. But I think what we need to remember as well, this is an ongoing conversation. There is nothing perfect about anything yet, but it is a product that we're trying to move towards and we're trying to do. And I think over the next few weeks, few months, there's going to be so many more answers. So bear with us if we don't get through everything today. But I'm very glad you're here to hold my hand, Caroline Barker. We have missed you.
You say that's a little bit hot and sweaty where I am, so no one wants to hold it at the moment. Right, let's get on with it then, shall we? For me, there's 2 key groups in all of this. The fans, who are the bedrock for a lot of clubs, many of whom are volunteers, and the players too, like past, present, and those to come in the future. So hopefully we'll address a lot of your questions over the next half hour or so in the company of NSL Managing Director Claire Nelson and Liz Bloor from the Players Association. Liz, Claire, after what must have been a manic few days, thank you so much for coming on. Liz, first off, because Claire, we've had a lot from you, which is always a good thing. But Liz, we've seen some player reaction online. What's been the sort of the overall feeling from the players?
Overall, it's sort of a kind of relief that at last they're hearing something. At last, it's happening, because this has been a long while in the making. I look back and we did our original player survey in 2021. We had 101 players respond to that and be very positive about professionalisation and the need for it. But now, inevitably, it's excitement for a lot, but it's also worry for quite a few as well. Those whose clubs aren't going forward, and those who probably are 11, 12 in a squad, or even 9, 10, 11, 12. Will I get signed? Will I get a contract next year? Do I need to move? The geography is obviously all different. So more questions, some excitement, some concerns, but I think probably mainly reactions we could have predicted. And we did do some work with players in March about the psychology and the emotion of change and managing that, and how you can kind of control the controllables, but other things, how you deal with that. So I'd say probably overriding has been good, but we obviously are focusing our efforts on those who are struggling more, because we're here to support them. So we're maybe hearing a few more of those stories at the moment, and obviously it's an ongoing job to help them navigate through and what their individual journey in netball looks like, because for each individual it will be different, and we expect every single one to continue playing netball, whether it's in exactly the same environment as they're in now or whether it looks different. That will evolve over time.
Well, this is why this is perfect, because we're hopefully channeling the voice of the fans, the coaches, the clubs, and the players then, Liz. And this is something we've not heard, or at least we've not seen, but I know you two have been having conversations. Is there something then from the players' perspective you would like to put to Claire?
I think, to be fair, we've built a very strong working relationship with England Netball and with Super League, and have input all the way along. We've done player surveys, I've done in-depth interviews, and those have been fed into the shape and the look of the league. I think the most recent frustration has been around just how long it's taken for information to come out. And I do, we have tried to explain that has been because of the competitive tender and all that sort of thing. But I suppose just now getting the I's dotted, the T's crossed, things finalised so that they can start to make decisions. That's what I would say to Claire and England Netball, because some of it's about that layer below, which isn't necessarily the Super League, but it is that bit. What does that look like? How can players start making some concrete plans? Because I think that's where most of the worry is, uncertainty. And when also can they start talking to clubs? Everybody wants to start doing that now. If your club's going, you want to be able to tell another coach, a new coach, hey, I want to play. Please sign me. Look at me. Here's my reel of performance. So there's quite a few anxious people saying, yeah, when can we start talking? Those in the existing clubs, their coaches can chat to them, even though they can't sign them. You know that sort of relationship is going to exist, and coaches inevitably, even just in how they are with a player, they're going to have comfort. But there's others out there who are now, okay, who can I talk to? When can I talk to them? How can I do it? Please tell me. I can't wait till the end of June. So that's probably the biggest message that the players would like out there at the moment.
Yeah. So and look, we're aware of that. This has just been a lot for our players. We know that they want it. We know that they need it, and we. It wasn't just about us announcing the clubs. We announced the salary structure, an increase in our remuneration. And all of this was to drive a better on and off court product and to help those players on their journey to professionalisation. And of course, the announcement of the launch of the feeder league that sits underneath to really help drive those opportunities for players. We had said that the signing window opens equally at the end of the season, so that then everybody is kind of fair game, as it were. But to Liz's point there, there are existing relationships, and if your club is exiting, then you're going to sit and think, what does this mean for me? But also that new structure that we have means that there's some decisions that need to be made now. This isn't about loading benches anymore, or just, where are your mates, where's your family? This is going to be tactical. This is really about getting the best, strongest squads. Where are you going to get court time? What's the best environment for you? How are you going to shine? And so all these complexities of decision making then around geography, do you have another role? Are you studying? Where are your friends? There's a lot. So with professionalisation and the improvements we're bringing, it brings a whole host of new decisions that need to be made. And Liz, I think it was on announcement day, was feeding in kind of live feedback around how we can make sure that we're sort of supporting those players in clubs that are exiting to be able to showcase themselves. So the next few weeks is really about transition. I've always said I wanted, as kind of exciting and challenging as the last few days have been, I've always said I just want to get the information out there, because then at least we can talk to it, we can collaborate, we can work as clubs, new and exiting, the MPA coaches across our regions with our players. We can all then go, what do we need to do to be ready? T probably has far more kind of insight on what this is going to mean for players and what those decisions look like moving forward. But we're here to listen, and we are here to try and make this transition as easy as possible in order for us to have these strong teams and these empowered players to move forward into this first stage of the new era.
Well, I know Tamsin has a lot to say. All good things as well, as always. We will get to that, and lots of your answers, I hope, for those listening, for you, Liz, for you, Claire, that we get to have this open door and this conversation continues, and some of it answered throughout this podcast. Right, let's get some of those questions then. Decisions. We'll get this out of the way, because if you're sat there thinking, how long has this been going? Liz, you mentioned since 2021, these conversations have been happening. We all know that teams come and go, and as desperately sad as it is, these things happen across the leagues. But let's talk about the basic standards you wanted teams to meet, Claire. Carolyn says, wonder if the lack of bigger venues in some parts of the country has played into the new look NSL geographically and making it uneven. For example, where is the nearest arena to Bath? So what basically were you looking for, Claire, from these standards? And is that one of the reasons why these clubs perhaps haven't achieved that?
Yeah, so I always talk about infrastructure arenas and investment funding in order for us to make a significant step change. And remember, what we're doing at the top here with professionalisation is to strengthen and enhance the whole sporting infrastructure. This is about having a better performance, elite performance system. This is about inspiring more people to get involved. And by being able to attract greater revenues into the sport, we can reinvest back into it. So to make those step changes, and I've talked a lot about this, was data-driven and insight-driven. And a lot of that insight, again, came from the MPA, looking at what our players needed and wanted, looking across other sports, women's sport, looking at our competitors at the other side of the world, listening to our broadcast partners who've been with us on a 17-year journey, but are like, people are just not tuning in to blowout games and sports halls. We don't sell tickets to games that are people assume who's going to win and lose, and is this going to be a blowout, or is it not a great experience? So all of these things were insight driven. So at a time when there's momentum behind women's sport, but more importantly, there's momentum behind our sport, we then created a model of what we needed 2.0 to look like. Now, we talk about this being a 10-year journey, because that's the reality. When you don't have someone at the centre writing you a £50 million cheque, then you have got to do this. We're doing this on our own. And we went through an independent review years ago where all clubs were part of that. I was part of that with Sirens. We all said we need to move forward into the future. We went through a period where we explored equity, and we turned that down because it would have absolutely taken the control of our sport out of our hands. And we all said we were going to do this ourselves. So we have to be transformational to unlock those revenues. And those revenues come from fan power, from bums on seats and eyeballs. And by unlocking those revenues, we are able to take our sport to another level. But that transformational change has to be done in a sustainable way. So we talk about from year one, we've got to be able to improve our performance program for players. We've got to pay them a bit more. We've got to increase our resource, because some of these clubs, some are more professional with lots of resource, but some are a couple of people and almost kind of volunteer-led. And we've got to have better venues, and we've got to be able to have at least in year one 2 arena games, moving to 3, then 4. So all of these things were taken into account. So when we went to open tender, and remember, clubs have known this is coming. We've been having conversations. We've been looking at standards and working on what those minimum or expected operating standards were for a year and a half now. We've had sight of what this model could be. Clubs have then had to look at, is this what we want to do? Is this right for us? And then more importantly, can we do it? And the can we do it absolutely is about arenas, but it's all those other things that I said. And for me, it's about being able to come on this journey for 10 years and beyond. It's about being able to have continued investment into the product on and off the court. It's about having the means to grow your revenues to reinvest back into. So with all of this, some clubs, and we've seen those statements that said we couldn't do it. Some clubs withdrew from the process and said, this isn't for us. We can't be part of that. We wish you well. Some clubs had to bash at it, but just didn't give us enough of the confidence in what they were putting forward that they would have the means by which to move forward. And so to de-risk our sport, we had to make sure that we had 8 fit-for-purpose clubs who could all satisfy those critical criteria. Now, this is where we're at now. This is today. We've got 8 clubs that can meet these, and we've talked about exploring other opportunities where we think there could be new arenas and investing partners that want to come into the sport. We've talked quite openly about that potentially being in Bristol in the southwest. And there was interest from other regions across the UK that we will stay in contact with. But for now, we would not have been doing the right thing for the sport if we went with heart, passion, hard work, legacy, and hope. We have to build this on infrastructures that are, we believe, are built to last. And that's why we wanted to give information to players sooner, but we've had to go through financial scrutiny and look at, the people and the organisations that are committing to doing this for us. We've had to have the evidence of that, and we've had to make sure that we as an independent panel, as a governing body, as the owners of a sport, can say we have confidence that we've made the right decision for us in order to professionalise the sport and ultimately to take the whole sport on this journey. Doesn't mean we've got it all the pieces now, all the boxes ticked, and where we've noticed that there are some gaps in some areas, we're working really, really hard to try and make sure that we don't lose pathways or participation opportunities and development opportunities. But for professionalisation, we had to make the right decision that was going to give us the best shot at moving forward into this new era.
Yeah, we'll talk pathways in a minute. There's lots in that, Liz. Are these the standards that the players were driving to?
Yes, I just wanted to actually, before I go on to that, just say that one of the comments that Claire made there was around sustainability. And having sat with the Wasps players a year ago when Wasps collapsed and they were all left devastated, and worked through the individuals and literally seen the distress, We never want to see a club that happening again. So the financial sustainability and the ambition and wish to make whatever the investment quantity, and we're not involved on the business side of any of this, but to know that these are clubs who have the desire to be there for at least 10 years and beyond is really important for that player comfort, really, because you don't want to be employed by a company who's precarious, who might go under. So that sustainability is really, really important. In terms of the standards and everything around the league, we were involved in commenting on the expected minimum operating standards on the player side of things, and I went through it literally line by line and said, I think this should happen in year 1, not wait till year 3, because obviously some of the standards grow over time, and we fed all of that back. So there were some things that we felt, some of the medical insurance, some of the physio cover, we felt that it should be improved sooner. Where it exactly landed, I don't know, because I'm not party to the final tender documents, which is fine. But we pushed on every single thing to say what we would like to see. But also, we live in the real world. Everybody who's involved in the Netball Players Association has had involvement with netball clubs or with England Netball over many years, and we know the amount of money and resources that netball has. We've seen other women's sport. I know what the salary caps are in other women's sport through my work with other player associations, and they're not paid huge amounts of money. Women's sport may be the next best thing, but certainly to my understanding, sponsors are not putting value on it yet and are not writing big checks. So we have to be realistic. We would love that every girl was being paid 50 to 100k to play absolutely full time, but that's not where the marketplace is. So I think we've pushed on the welfare standards as much as possible, because that's really important. And obviously the increase in money that now, based upon a half-time, a 0.5 full-time equivalent job, players are getting a sensible amount of money that will enable them to reduce some of their hours in their other employment. And that was the key for us. And the feedback from players on the surveys was they want to be able to be dual career. They didn't want it to go so professional that they all had to drop their jobs. Because if you're late 20s now and maybe think I've got 3 or 4 more years playing, you don't want to opt out of your career. If you're 19, you might think, great, I'd love to be full time, but I should also do a bit of study or a bit of other work, because no sports career is forever. We all know that. You always are going to retire at some point.
And it could be quicker than you think if God forbid you don't have this, but if you have a horrific injury, it can be over the next day. So what's the backup plan? Tamsin, without getting bogged down in this and keeping on the idea of standards, if this didn't happen, if these standards weren't reached, do you see netball progressing?
No, I don't. And I think that was the crossroads we were at, and we've been at for a while. You get opportunities, you get certain opportunities as the sport's moving along to make change, to make substantial change. And I think COVID slowed us down in lots of things. I think there was an opportunity off the back of the World Cup. We weren't able to take that opportunity, sadly. And we saw the growth in the game off the back of the amazing World Cup in Liverpool, the attendances, the interest in the sport. COVID hit, we struggled as a sport hugely for, again, various reasons of just how our sport operates. And we've come off the back of it. England had the best ever performance in a World Cup this last summer. And it was an opportunity to take it. And I think it has to happen. I come in from lots of different angles, because I have been a player. I was there when the Super League first started. Remember, this was back in 2005? I played in the first ever Super Cup. Yeah, because it's transitioned into Super League. We have seen clubs come in and go for various different reasons, whether they could stay in, whether models changed, but nothing major has changed. Nothing major in terms of the finances paid to the players, nothing major in terms of the ambition to move to arenas. Even with the broadcast, I started working for Sky probably back in 2012. So we haven't seen anything drastically go. And I think this is an opportunity that's too good to take. And I think what's been interesting looking at this as a sort of whole is that the Pro League is just one part of a really big netball picture. Just because the Pro League is changing and adjusting doesn't stop the hundreds of thousands of people that participate in netball in so many different ways. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to change our perspective on it. We absolutely do, because things have changed. Existing clubs, lots of which I've been a party to, have gone. But at the same time, I I'm thrilled that we will have an opportunity to make hundreds of women employed properly in female sport. Like, I can't not be excited about that piece. But what I think people need to know behind the scenes is that the clubs are dedicated to doing this differently. So my role at London Mavs, for example, this is not just about us doing the same thing we've always done. So we know we have a responsibility here. You have to understand the amount of investment these clubs are willing to put in is huge. It is unheard of that the loss that they're going to work at for the start is massive, which you expect in professional sport. But I'm talking huge amounts that people don't take into account. It's not cheap to hire out Wembley. It's not cheap to run an indoor sport. It's not cheap to fully pay people professional money. So this is the first step of it. And for that to happen, we've got to see some significant changes. And
you're saying
when
that's
I go back
sustainable, Tamsin. You're saying that significant amount of money, there's no risk from your club not being around in the next 5-10 years.
There's always risk in everything that you do, and there is a risk, of course, going. I'm not naive enough to say that there's not a risk, but the only way to invest this amount of money and move forward is to make those changes behind the scenes. So we couldn't carry on down the path we were going and invest the money because there'd be no return. So the money comes from ticket sales and sponsorship, right? Which means you need more eyes on the game, and that is not just about bums on seats. Like, I love a stat. So here's some stats for you, right? Across the board, we average across the 10 teams 150 season ticket sales. Now, some go up to as many as 300. Some are as little as 57. So when people say, we're supporting the game, not consistently, we're not doing that across the board. And I've been passionate about this for a very, very long time. We don't show up consistently. We'll show up to one game. There is a small percentage of diehard fans like me who give it everything and are at everything, but that isn't happening well enough. So that doesn't pay the bills. That doesn't help. And this is why you've seen so many changes over the years, because unless you're linked to a university where you get those venues for free, it's not effective. It doesn't help. The whole idea of broadcast, we've taken a fair point of criticism this year for some things that I won't even try and back up. But there are other things that we have increased on the numbers of streaming this year, like something like 97,000 people more views that we've ever had. And that was earlier on in the season. So we know there is significant changes in streaming the game, but we know we have to do better with that. I understand that, but we are trying to put things in place that are sustainable. And going to the players, we've not just looked at this as a club and gone, oh, we're just going to, do this. We're looking across the league at who are the best 80 players. And then what does that mean for the development underneath? Who are the best coaches that are going to develop this system underneath? Because I never had that. And then it goes back to the pathway. Liz will talk openly about the conversation she's had with the players. It wasn't sustainable. Some of them were broken. How can I honestly go to a load of parents when I'm coaching an under-19 side and go, we've got the best pathway in the country, when I've got a load of senior players going, this is not okay for us. We can't do this anymore. So
broken,
I want to
how?
make our pathways better.
Just briefly, broken
well,
how?
Liz, you can probably expand on that.
I'm just going to read you a quote from the survey, because the difficulties of working a full-time job and being expected to meet training, travel and financial demands that puts on each individual woman just to be able to play the game is outdated and unjust. That's a direct quote from one of the players. It's just being paid very little because what the salaries were, that sometimes, we had one year a player who was living and working in the north and playing for a south-based team, and the money she would pay at minimum, the minimum salary, wouldn't quite cover her train fare to come down. And she was doing that 2 or 3 times a week, and she was traveling back late at night and then doing a full day's work. It's just brutal. We've had people lose jobs because one year the opening weekend moved, and because she now couldn't do the job that was connected with a school where she had house parent responsibilities, she lost that job because she prioritized netball, and that was her accommodation as well. So these are the compromises that people are having to make. And I still get worried about youngsters driving from a university location to training with a car full of other kids, and they're getting back at 11, 12 at night. They've trained for several hours. That's not really safe. Do you want your 19, 20-year-old to be driving up motorways in the dark with probably the 3 others all asleep after training? We have to do better. Young women deserve better, and these are the people who are the best players in our country. If that's how we treat the best ones, it just isn't good enough. And that's why I'm so passionate. That's why I founded the MPA, actually, to kind of really be that voice and fight for the players. As Tamsin says, I know the clubs are passionate about them too, but it's just not been possible to do better. And now we all have to do better. The clubs do, and we do on behalf of the players.
I just want to add to that. Can I just add quickly to that? And that's what I was going to say about us trying to be more creative. So I know we haven't got everything right, but this is not a case of I'm looking at it going, well, I don't want the whole Southwest pathway to go. I want to look at how we can all creatively work at that. But I also don't expect a 15, 16-year-old to have to drive 4 hours to get to the best training. You know, we want our sport to be more visible. We need to make our pathways better than what they ever were before. And we need to make sure that the top level is still visible, even if you don't get to go every single week, but it might be to one major game, or we're now professional. So you see these athletes far more in their entirety, just like you see in football. So I'm just saying, I think this is an opportunity for us to think outside the box. And even my time at Sirens, you know, one of the reasons, Scotland, one of the reasons I couldn't carry on as a head netball coach was because of my personal situation. I needed to be able to move there now to run a full-time program. Just seen the announcement of the new Scotland coach today, who can do that. And I'm absolutely thrilled that they're able to do that. So don't think behind the scenes that clubs for years haven't been working on plans that are not only the best for their area. And that's not blanket across the league. It cannot. Your area has to operate best for you and best how your club works. And I, you know, as a plea from someone at London Mavericks, I'm looking at the best way now that our region operates and still engages with others around the area, because I don't have to say so signpost to this place. And that I take on as a challenge, understand the barriers for some people at the minute, but will do my utmost to make sure we are not losing people. And actually this could be a really exciting turning point for all of us.
We've talked about that.
We've had a hold on just 1 second, Claire, because I feel like we've had a big box of Quality Street and we've thrown everything in at the moment and we're picking our best bits out, which is beautiful. But I'm going to be a bit more selective because we've got loads of questions to get through. We've gone 25 minutes. And as much as I'm enjoying all your chat, let's bash through some more points, because there's a lot in what you just said there, Tamsin, that picks up on this. And I will, Claire, we can come back to all of this at the end. But one of the huge discussion areas, and this is off the court, we're taking comments from players, from fans, from owners as well. Asha Francis at Team Bath saying, I'm heartbroken for the aspiring young women who no longer have role models in this region. Rachel, a fan, writes, when you consider the pathways at Team Bath that they've been created, you can't help feel the loss for aspiring netballers in the Southwest. Without access, netball will lose a generation. So let's talk pathways. Let's talk about losing players. Liz, are you worried that a generation will be lost?
No, I'm not. I mean, I live in Bath. I've been involved with Team Bath from almost its inception. I represented them in 2005 at the launch of the first iteration of Super League. So I'm obviously passionately disappointed that they're not going to be there. But I understand that they didn't make the cut in the Brave New World. So, you know, we have to park that and then look to how it can not be a disaster. I mean, across the Southwest for years, there has been very healthy netball leagues in all of the counties. There have been hubs and satellites, under 13s, under 15s, which then feed into pathway hubs from Team Bath at 17s and 19s in Exeter and Taunton and Dorset. Up into Gloucester. That was a bit of a battleground between Seven Stars and Team Bath. Those hubs, as long as somebody is leading the pathway, and I don't yet know where that's landing, whether Team Bath are going to be continuing with the pathway or not, that's something which I'm not involved with. But let's assume they continue to run the pathway. All of those things will still happen. Yes, they won't have the matches happening on the 7 times a year that the Super League match happens, to which, as Tamsin's already said with her stats, there's only a relatively few people go every time. Quite a lot will bring a trip up once a season to watch. There will still be top level netball visible on television, on the streaming services, etc. So you can still see what you're aspiring to do. You may not be able to go post 23-ish, because that's the sort of age group that we're looking at, the feeder competition, and that would be part of the pathway. But by that age, you finish uni, you're going to uni at 18, 19 anyway. So there is opportunity to move to other places if you are going to get into that Super League team. So I don't think we should catastrophize over it. It is difficult and it's disappointing, but netball was running in the Southwest before Team Bath came. I played in leagues in Bristol when we were just Bath Netball Club before it married with Team Bath and became the community arm of Team Bath. So I don't think it's a disaster. My heart goes out to Asha. Known Asha since she was a student, and it's horrible to lose your job in quite a public situation as well. really feel for and the players there. But I don't think we should say this is the death of netball in the Southwest. I really don't think it is.
Claire, Tamsin?
Yeah, if I can come in, and I think you answered that really well, Liz. Look, this is difficult, and it is devastating for those people. I spent the last 2 weeks before announcement just thinking about every little girl who was going, and their mum was going to go. You know, your club is going, and that breaks my heart. I think about the individuals involved in that. Particularly those ones that I know exceptionally well, and you know, particularly in Scotland, it's difficult. But I've always been focused on we have to do the right thing now, because we've got to create better opportunities for the future. This is about doing more for our people on and off the court for the future. But this isn't about there's not going to be a disappearing of role models. Our best players are going to play, and they're going to play in better competition, and they're going to get better as a result of it. And hopefully that's going to help our national athletes, and we're going to see the Roses really, succeed on the world stage, but also our best UK athletes across there. If you're our best player, you are going to play in this league, and that competition is going to be more exciting than ever before. And you are going to be able to watch every single game. And if you can travel to them, please do, because Tamsin's right. The statistic at the moment is our fans are going to 1.1 game. So even if you had to travel, and we had it in Scotland, bless our fans from Aberdeen and Perth and the Highlands and Islands, they got on buses and they went 4 or 5 hours to go and support Sirens. So that doesn't need to go away from it. Our pathway will remain, and we are doing everything to keep our pathway going in the Southwest and South. As Tamsin said, it's all going to look a little bit different, but we are now working with our clubs to go, what are our territories? And we are enhancing what that coaching and competition looks like at the top. So that ability to still, if you are talented, move through that pathway and to have a career and to be inspired by our top athletes isn't going to go away. And hopefully everything that we're doing now by creating this better looking product and being able to get it out there and leverage that is going to inspire more people to take up the game, whether it's walking netball or whether it's B netball in schools. Because at the moment, we are the #1 choice for women, but football's taking over in schools because it's so accessible and it's so there. And when you look at the WSL and the Lionesses, like, we are going to lose our place as being the women's sport if we don't create something more aspirational, something that is able to attract revenues that allow us to invest back into the sport. So I understand that this hurts as a fan. I understand it hurts as all the players and staff who put their everything in. And believe me, I worked with Bath and have really been part of their journey this last 9 months to try and help them bring this tender to the table. But we'll go back to the start of this. They're just not able to meet those EOS at this time. But we are going to continue exploring those opportunities in Bristol and the Southwest. But every netballer across England at the moment, because England Netball is responsible for the pathway, working with our clubs, is going to have access to better clubs, better coaching and better competition through our performance pathway.
Why not, Tamsin, just quickly to you, why not put Surrey Storm, Sirens, if they wanted to, Team Bath, why not just stick them in the feeder league then, with the opportunity for promotion in the future?
Well, I think there's two pieces to this, isn't it? And the first part for me is players, like Liz was saying, that the top league now, it comes into that little branch I was talking about. It is just that. It's the 80 best players, the 80 best. I mean, it's so minimal. If you look across the league at the moment, each pathway, each club has, 300 athletes in their pathway, approximately. It's 3,000 athletes going for 80 places. And, you listen to the podcast I did with Sonia McCloma the other week. It's tough. It's brutal. And actually, if you look at the top 4 teams in the league at the moment and look at their starting sevens, there's only 7 players out of those 28 that came through their pathways. 7. So, those players are coming from everywhere. So first of all, it's not getting worried that those players aren't going to get looked at anymore. Trust me, if you're the best, you're getting pulled. That's why Serena Guthrie as a kid was pulled out of Jersey, because she was the best. And Jiva Mentor was pulled from Bournemouth. And, that will still happen. So that's the first thing. I think the second piece of that is that I know communication is always the issue, and it's the first thing I will bang on about with England Netball as well, is that they do need to. The feeder league will happen. Is it totally and utterly cemented in place yet of what that will look like? No, but I also know, because a lot of these conversations are going on behind the scenes. Now, do we need to get into a relegation promotion thing? We're not at that stage. The top level is going to sit here. Now, that doesn't mean clubs won't add, but I would like to think that the pathways, for example, Scotland, we were already taking a development group down into the UK, into England, to play other teams. That's been happening this year. I don't think that will stop. Why would it stop? So there is an element that this is going to happen. And as a coach at each club, we've got to go, how does that look like? How am I best going to create the next step of players? How do I stop these guys from dropping away? And how then do I also work with the existing clubs in your area to not take the players away all the time and go, well, actually, what competition are you providing? And actually, if there's only ever 80 spaces, we can't have this whole, if I don't make it to the top level, I just drop out. What does the uni system like? What does your regional netball look like? What does Prem netball look like? Because you don't want people just to stop because they don't make it to the top. And I think that messaging has to be keep pushing back there, because that can't be the only reason we play the game.
Go on, Claire. You look like you want to say something.
No, I'm just, everything Tamsin's saying is absolutely right. We've always said that what we need to do at the top is, it's not everything. This is about creating a stronger ecosystem for our sport. And actually, the beauty of where we are as a sport, unlike others, unlike football, is that we own the whole sport. So when we're creating professionalization, albeit we've got NUCO set up, it's still integrated and aligned to the governing bodies. And we've got these relationships across UK netball that means that when we professionalize the sport, it should also strengthen the pathways. It's about participation. It's about officials and coaches. Now, we've got to prioritize what we do, when and how. We're doing it all in consultation, and we've got the likes of MPA and our performance coaches and PDs sitting around the table contributing to this. Karen Atkinson sits in that from a Scotland perspective. We've got all our best minds together saying, what is it that we need to do, when and how, that makes sure we're constantly strengthening our sport, we move in the right direction. And we don't have all the answers now. And I said that on announcement day. We gave some big pieces of information, but the rest we're still working on. And we're doing what we can as quickly as we can to be able to give answers and assurances to those who feel most uncertain or displaced or concerned at this moment in time. And then after that, we've got to build, and we've got to go on a journey, and we've got to be data driven as well. I do talk about data, but we've got to get smarter on what is working and how we do things to move forward. So yeah, it's change, and it feels uncertain, but I just keep thinking, when we get through this time next year, hopefully we can all see and feel that we're in a slightly better place. And those people that are feeling like we don't know what the future holds now, they're going to go, okay, I get it. This is what the new world looks like for me, and that's okay.
One thing that isn't okay is you saying that Tamsin was right. I mean, it's disappointing that happens most of the time. Right, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left just to wrap things up, because we talked a lot about, clearly, the heartache and the agony and the uncertainty that some are feeling at the moment. Totally understandable with all three of you have said. But this is Off the Court with Tamsin Greenway, Liz Bloor and Claire Nelson. So for these last few moments, I'm going to talk about the future, Claire. I want to see that, the reasons to be cheerful. I think there's a song in there, Tamsin. It's about actually what this will do. So Tamsin, what's the dream? Because hopefully this door and this conversation between all three of you can happen again, and we can keep having this on Sky Sports. But what do you want to see happen now, Tamsin? And who do you want to hear from?
Yeah, the dream for me has always been the dream. We have a professional netball league in this country where players are played properly. Thousands of people come to watch. We compete with the SSN. We have a really successful Roses program. And netball's the number one female sport in the country. That's the dream. Now, I'm well aware there's a few steps to go there, but I will keep saying it. If we want better broadcasts, we want bigger sponsors, we want to keep improving our game, then we need to show up. And that, I've had quite a lot of comments with, it's so easy for you to just say we're a netball family in this, and you've not taken. I care. Trust me, I care. I live, breathe, die this sport. I've been from the very bottom to the top, and it is not perfect. We are not doing things perfectly, but I do believe this is a massive opportunity. And I know for us as a club to be sustainable, to take away that fear of what this looks like, we're going to need the support of the fan base. And you can have my word on the other side that as a club, we are going to do everything to showcase this game in its best entirety and do it differently and do it better and hopefully win. That's what I want to do. I like winning.
Do you? Yeah. She's done it often enough. Liz, from your perspective, what do you want to hear from Claire? What do you want to see as players and as part of that collective now of players from the league going forward to get an ambition that you want to achieve?
Well, I think that our ambition will be everything that Tamsin just said, plus. We obviously would like to see the potential, assuming that all of the aspiration and all of the commercial values and so on comes through. I'd like to see the league expand, so that in 3 to 6 years that we're talking about a 10-team league, and that we're probably talking about maybe bigger squads. I don't know. That's the proof of the pudding of how that works will come out. But if there's enough revenues, I would really like to see that, and for it to become a genuine option to be a full-time job and career for a 15-year-old who's highly talented, who's playing multiple sports, and she says, I'm going to be a professional netballer. Because we've seen that aspiration come much louder and clearer after the Lionesses' success. We now want that visibility in netball, because I don't want all those girls playing rugby, cricket, football, whatever. I want them all playing netball. I love the fact there's a choice, because everybody should have choices. But I want as many of those brilliantly talented girls and young women to want to come into netball and to know that it treats them really well, that the welfare of the player is at the heart of everything that happens. Because as I say to players very often, you have to realise how important you are in this, because if you don't run around and do what you do, none of this exists. So they are always need to be front and centre. Obviously, the infrastructure, the clubs, everything else is vital too. But I want them to know that if they come into netball, they will be paid fairly, and I hope fairly well as well, and they will be treated really well, that they will have their female health, really thought about, really looked after, that they will be, it'll be a very good place to be, culturally, financially and emotionally. It'll be a good, fun place, and that we will also win the World Cup every year. That's my last dream, but hey, that's maybe not realistic yet.
Claire, here is me hoping to sort of salve you over what's happened over the last, few days and calm things down, but you've just had some more things added to your list, so no pressure. From you, Claire, what can we expect to see in the short term? When can fans expect to hear more things? And can we grab you again and keep having these conversations? Is the door open?
First of all, the door's wide open, and anybody that knows me, and when I was appointed into post, they knew that I was very open, very honest, very transparent, very authentic. I found it really difficult not being able to talk openly about what we're doing, but I also was like, although it's felt like forever, it's been a few months and we had to get this process right. And if we did that, then we can move forward and talk to it. And even with, there's been some really exciting things, there's been some difficult things, I'm not afraid to talk about them, to explain the rationale that sits behind them. So we've obviously got to now start transitioning. We've got a season to finish, and there will be exiting teams that we need to manage through that. There's also our biggest ever grand final, and we've got some other announcements coming. And this is the time now that we need to celebrate and leverage our sport to help with that momentum and move us into the new world. But behind the scenes, as T knows better than anyone, we've got a product and a brand and a board and commercials and, rules and innovation and, fixtures and all these amazing things that we need to do to be ready to really make next year a success. And if we can get the product right, this is all about actually a fan product. And going back to, I think, what T was talking to at the start, we can get to where we want to be quicker if we can get the fans to show up. Now, I understand why they're not at the moment. I understand the motivators for playing netball are different to being a fan for women. I know the financial barriers. I know that we hold the majority of the, mental load in the home and the childcare and all these things. I know what drives you to buy, when you buy, what you want to buy and what you want to watch. So we're trying our best to create this on and off court product, this, emotive brand that connects beyond your 7 home games for each club, but actually that really compels people to want to show up. Because if they do, then we drive everything forward quicker. And if I'm allowed to say, my dream is completely building on what they both said. I do what I do in this sport because I am passionate about creating a better, fairer future and system for women and girls, bar none. And I believe that sport has the power to unlock that. And I believe that our sport is the most unparalleled proposition out there to go and drive change for women and girls. So I don't just want girls going, I want to be paid as a player. I want to lead the way in what that means and what those careers mean and how we are developing your education and your additional skills. We're helping you with your maternal health. Do you want to be a mother or are you preparing for motherhood? How can you be your full and best self and have a career? And off the court, we need more women around boards wanting to own clubs. I mean, Tamsin has had 2 women come with their own money and say, we are going to run this club for women and we're going to drive and inspire impact while we're doing it. I want to see CEOs, CMOs, CCOs leading the way, and our sport again has more opportunity to do that than anyone else. And if we can create that, we not only have a great sport which inspires and which can develop players, but we have something which we can leverage, which enables us to have the power to drive and influence change where we all need it at a much bigger societal, political and emotional level. So it feels uncomfortable, but I hope that everybody knows that the time dedication, the intention, the personal sacrifice that's going into this is because we want to make this bigger, better, stronger. This isn't about kicking people out. This isn't about leaving people behind. It's not about turning lights off. It's about creating things stronger. And if you don't understand why those decisions have been made right now, well, I'm sorry. We will continue to explain, to listen and to support, to find solutions. But don't feel bereft like this is for you. This is the loss of things. It's the loss of some things in order to make way for new. And that's what we're all committed to doing.
And we will continue to ask those questions. And the one thing I've learned from all 3 of you is that you will continue to answer them too. So if there is something you want to ask of any of the panel or anyone in the future, Tamsin always has her DMs open. Don't send them to her. Just use the hashtag #OffTheCourt. See the fear on her face. If you were watching this, you'd see it right now. But I'll tell you, you could probably hear it from that end of the country as well. Tamsin, thank you. Claire Nelson, thank you. Liz Bloor, thank you as well. And thank you to everyone that's listened or watched this too. This was a special Off the Court. Tamsin, maybe me. We might be back at the weekend. I think we're watching some netball. Ultimately, we're all fans. Yes, we want questions answered. But the heartening thing I've discovered over the last 7.5 hours talking to all 3 of you, it wasn't that long, is that actually you're fans too, and you're just trying the best for the sport. And that ultimately is what we can all hope for in the future. Thank you for listening. See you again soon. Bye-bye.